Okay, I want you to picture a room. It's not a courtroom, it's not a parliament, it's just a private room, Probably comfortable, maybe a little too quiet.
Right.
And in this room, you have two men sitting across from each other. On one side, you have a former prime minister of a major military power, a war hero, a statesman.
And on the other side, a disgraced financier. A man whose name has, well, it's become absolute poison in polite society.
We are talking about Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein. And just hearing those two names in the same sentence...
It instantly makes you think of tabloids, right?
Yeah.
The flight logs, the scandals, all the conspiracy theories. It's almost reflexive at this point.
Exactly. It sounds like the setup for a Netflix thriller that got rejected for being a little too unbelievable. But here's the thing, and this is why we're doing this deep dive today. They aren't talking about private islands. They aren't talking about illicit activities, at least not the kind you're probably thinking of. They're being recorded, and the subject of their conversation is engineering.
But not civil engineering. They're not building bridges.
No. They're talking about engineering a population.
Yeah.
And that is where we're going to live for the next 20 minutes or so. We're putting the whole scandal part of the Epstein saga in a box, and we're just going to shove it under the bed.
We aren't here to gossip.
We're here to look at a specific set of files released by the U.S. Department of Justice, a leaked audio recording, and the analysis that came after. We're talking about a concept called demographic engineering.
Which is really just a polite, sort of academic way of saying, how does a government decide exactly who gets to live inside its borders?
To make sure the right people stay in charge.
Exactly.
It's the ultimate game of SimCity, but with, real human beings. And what really struck me about this source material, this analysis of the tape, is the tone.
Right.
Barak isn't speaking like a politician on CNN. He's speaking like a mechanic looking under the hood of a car.
That's the value of these kinds of leaks.
Yeah.
It's a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the strategic mind of a world leader when they think the microphones are off.
Or at least when they think only a friend is listening.
It just strips away all the diplomatic gloss.
So let's get into the meat of it. The source material centers on one specific conversation Barak is recounting to Epstein. He tells Epstein about a chat he had with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And he throws out a number.
A very specific, very large number.
Just 1 more million.
1 million.
That's the ask. He tells Epstein that he told Putin Israel needs just 1 more million Russian-speaking immigrants.
And to put that into perspective for you, Israel is a nation of, at that time, around 7 or 8 million people. Asking for another million is, it's huge.
That's not just immigration.
No, that's a demographic tidal wave. That's increasing your population by, what, nearly 15% overnight?
And Barak is so confident about it on the tape. He says Israel could easily absorb them. But the question that immediately jumped out at me was, why?
Right, why?
Why specifically Russian speakers? Why 1 million? What's the crisis that requires importing the population of a medium-sized American city?
Well, the source analysis breaks this down beautifully. There are two motivations here, and they operate on completely different levels. The first one is the external motivation.
Okay.
And if you follow Middle Eastern politics, this one will make a lot of sense. It's about the conflict with the Palestinians.
Right, the article frames this as a numbers game. Demographics is destiny, as they say.
Exactly. The source explicitly frames this request as an effort to alter the demographic balance, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea.
So if you're worried the Palestinian population is growing faster than the Jewish population...
You have two choices. You can have more babies, which takes 20 years to pay off, or you import voters.
So motivation number 1 is basically just a counterweight. We need more bodies on our side of the scale.
Precisely. It's a security strategy using census data. But, and this is where the deep dive gets really fascinating, the source suggests that the external motivation is actually secondary.
Really?
The real juice, the thing that Barak is really passionate about on this tape, is the internal motivation.
This is the part that actually surprised me. He's not just worried about the Palestinians. He's worried about his own people.
Or rather, a specific kind of his own people.
Right.
I mean, you have to look at who Ehud Barak is. He's the old guard, secular, Ashkenazi, labor movement, the founders' generation.
Okay.
And on this tape, he underscores these deep divisions between secular Jews and religious Jews. He sees the Orthodox rabbinate and the religious right growing in power, and frankly, it terrifies him.
So when he asks for 1 million Russian speakers, he isn't just asking for Jews, he's asking for secular reinforcements.
Correct. The source notes that these immigrants are described as white Slavic peoples, Barak views them as a cultural and political weapon.
He wants to import 1 million people who look like him and think like him to dilute the influence of the religious Jews.
Yeah, it's basically gerrymandering, but instead of redrawing the district lines.
You're just shipping in a whole new electorate.
That is a perfect way to put it. He's trying to reshape the DNA of the electorate because he feels like he's losing the culture war at home.
Okay, so that's the plan. Get the Russians, save the secular state. But this is where the conversation takes a turn that the source material flags as, well, pretty controversial.
The quality controversy,
Yeah.
yeah. This is the part of the tape that's hard to listen to without flinching a little bit.
It really is. So Barak starts comparing this potential Russian wave to the previous waves of immigration that built the state of Israel. Specifically, he talks about the Jews who came from North Africa and the Middle East, the Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews back in the 40s and 50s.
Right, and keep in mind, these are the people who lived in the tent cities, who worked the land, who built the infrastructure. I mean, they're a foundational part of the nation.
And Barak refers to their arrival as a salvation wave, which, you know, sounds nice initially.
At first.
But then he follows it up. He says, it was kind of a salvation wave from North Africa, from the Arabs, from whatever. They took whatever came.
They took whatever came.
That phrase just hangs in the air. It sounds like he's talking about, I don't know, a shipment of mismatched furniture. We took whatever came.
It's incredibly dismissive. And he contrasts that whatever came attitude with his current plan. He tells Epstein that now the authorities can be selective.
Selective.
He says they can control the quality much more effectively than founding fathers could.
Control the quality. I mean, we were talking about human beings here, families.
The source analysis does not mince words on this. It labels this commentary as evidence of ingrained racism within certain elite circles. The implication is stark. Barak views the white Slavic peoples from the Soviet Union as a higher quality import than the Jews from Arab lands.
It creates this really uncomfortable hierarchy of citizenship, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, there are necessary immigrants who you take because you're desperate, and then there are quality immigrants who you actually want because they fit your image of a modern Western state.
It challenges the whole melting pot mythology that nations love to tell themselves.
Yeah.
The source argues that Barak isn't looking for diversity, he's looking for uniformity.
He wants to maintain a specific cultural dominance.
And he views these potential Russian immigrants as the key to locking that in.
So it's really about engineering an identity. But here's the logistical problem, and the source goes into this in detail. If you bring in 1 million people from the former Soviet Union, you're bringing in a lot of people who are, well, culturally secular.
Absolutely. They ate pork, they didn't go to synagogue, they lived under communism for 70 years.
And crucially, under strict Jewish religious law. How many of them might not even be considered Jewish at all.
Right. Maybe their father was Jewish, but their mother wasn't. In the Orthodox tradition, lineage goes through the mother.
And since Barak's whole problem is that the Orthodox rabbinate has too much power, this creates a massive clash.
A huge clash.
You're importing 1 million people that the religious authorities, the people who control marriage and burial, might not even recognize as part of the tribe.
Exactly. You're importing a crisis. So Barak has to engineer a solution to that, too. He tells Epstein that the strategy involves breaking the monopoly of the Orthodox rabbinate.
He sounds like he's trying to break up a telecom trust. Breaking the monopoly.
He essentially is. In Israel, there is no civil marriage. The rabbinate controls personal status. Barak sees this as an obstacle.
Okay.
He suggests that if they can break this monopoly, it would open the gates for massive conversion into Judaism.
Massive conversion. Again, the language is so industrial. It sounds like he wants to set up a conversion factory at the airport.
That's the sophisticated manner he alludes to. His logic is, if we loosen the strict religious rules, we can convert these secular Russians en masse.
So they become officially Jewish by the state's definition.
They get the right to vote, they get integrated, and suddenly the demographic balance shifts away from the strictly Orthodox.
He's trying to hack the system. He even says it's a successful country, many will apply. He seems to think that if you just open the door a crack and lower the barrier to entry, people will just rush to join the club.
And he relies heavily on the power of assimilation. He tells Epstein that even if the first generation comes without preconditions, social pressure will force the second generation to adapt.
He's betting that the state's culture is stronger than the immigrant's background.
He thinks he can mold them.
But, and here is the twist that I think makes this whole story so incredibly ironic. Did it work? I mean, we know from history that about 1 million people did come from the former Soviet Union between 1989 and 2009. The source confirms that.
The people came.
Yeah.
The bodies arrived. But Barack's political calculation, it blew up in his face completely.
How so?
Remember, Barack is a man of the left, or at least the center left. He wanted these secular Russians to balance out the religious right.
Right?
He assumed. They're secular, they're educated, they're European, they'll vote for liberals like me.
A classic case of projecting your own values onto someone else.
Totally. And the source points out a major irony. Post-Soviet immigrants have tended to align significantly with the right wing.
Wow. So he engineered the demographics, but he got the wrong result.
He imported 1 million voters who, generally speaking, hated socialism because they just escaped it. They wanted strong leaders, they wanted tough security, they tended to be very nationalistic.
So instead of diluting the right wing,
They energized it.
that's tragic in a sort of Shakespearean political way. You try to manipulate the population to save your political life, and you end up handing the keys to your opponents.
It's the law of unintended consequences. You can move people on a map, you can offer them citizenship, you can even try to mass convert them.
But you can't engineer how they think.
Never. Barack treated them like assets, like numbers in a column. But they were people with their own trauma, their own history, and their own agency.
It really exposes the hubris of this kind of top-down planning. But look, we've been talking about the past. This tape is from years ago. Barack isn't in power anymore. Epstein is dead. It's easy to say, well, that was a weird chapter in history.
But the source material doesn't let us off the hook that easily. It fast forwards, it says. Look at today. Look at 2026.
Right. The deep dive moves us to February 2026. And it argues that demographic engineering isn't some relic of the past. It's active policy right now.
It just looks different.
It's less about secret meetings with Putin.
And more about line items in the state budget.
So let's talk about the 2026 state budget. The source reveals some new incentives for immigration that are, well, they're aggressive. I was reading the numbers and I had to double check them.
They're unprecedented. The Israeli government has revealed that for new immigrants and returning residents arriving in 2026, they're offering a 0% income tax rate for the first 2 years.
0%.
Zero. Nothing. If you move there in 2026 or 2027, you pay no income tax.
Wow.
Then the rates gradually increase afterwards. But for those first 24 months, it's a complete tax holiday.
That's a massive amount of money on the table, especially if you're a high earner. And who are they targeting with this? The source is pretty specific.
The source mentions that Americans and the French are especially welcome.
This connects right back to that quality discussion, doesn't it? They aren't trying to attract refugees. They're trying to attract wealth.
Westerners.
They're trying to attract Westerners.
It's an economic filter.
Yeah.
But there's a geopolitical implication here, too, according to the source. It's not just about getting more tech workers in Tel Aviv.
Right. The source argues that this money trail leads somewhere very specific. It leads to the West Bank.
The source claims that many of these new immigrants, specifically the Americans and French, end up moving to illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank.
Okay.
The argument is that these immigrants, who often have no previous links to that specific land, end up espousing domination over Palestinian land.
So connect the dots for me. How is this different from Barack's plan?
It's the same goal with a different mechanism. Barack wanted bodies to balance the vote. The current policy uses tax breaks to bring in ideology and capital to hold territory.
It's a softer economic version of the 1 million plan?
It is. You use fiscal policy to attract thousands, but the end result is still placing specific people in specific locations to achieve a political outcome.
It's really striking to see the continuity. Whether it's Barack on a secret tape talking about quality control or a public budget document in 2026 offering tax havens, the underlying logic remains the same.
The population is a tool.
Yeah.
That's the core of it. The population isn't viewed as just a collection of families trying to live their lives. They're viewed as strategic assets. You move them here to block a withdrawal. You move them there to swing an election. You tax them less to make them stay.
It makes you wonder about the individual experience in all of this. You know, you move somewhere because the tax rate is great or because you feel a spiritual connection or because you want to be safe. But in the eyes of the state planners, you're just a chess piece. You're a sandbag in a demographic dam.
And that's the so what for our listeners, I think. We live in a world where we talk about demographics like it's just...
Right. Oh, the birth rate is down or immigration is up.
We act like it's these natural organic tides.
But this deep dive shows it's anything but organic.
It is engineered, it is curated. Whether it's through quality control comments behind closed doors or 0% tax brackets in a public budget, governments are constantly trying to design their population.
And as we saw with the Barack tape, these decisions are sometimes driven by prejudices like the white Slavic preference that they would never, ever admit to on a campaign stage.
It really peels back the curtain on how power actually operates.
It's not just about winning the game, it's about choosing who the players are.
Precisely. It's about constructing the electorate that keeps you in power.
But then you have the failure. And I think we can't stress that enough. Barack's plan didn't work the way he wanted.
No. And that's the warning label on the bottle of demographic engineering. You can design the perfect plan. You can have the perfect quality control. But people are messy. People change.
The secular Russians became the nationalist, right?
If you treat people like components in a machine, you might find that the machine doesn't operate the way you designed it.
The components have a mind of their own.
Always.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with a pretty provocative picture. We have a former prime minister candidly discussing the quality of human beings as if he's grading diamonds.
Yeah.
We have a plan to mass convert people to break a religious monopoly, and we have a modern-day tax haven strategy to draw Westerners into a conflict zone.
It's a lot to process. It forces you to look at immigration policy differently, no matter where you live.
It does. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We talk a lot about nations as homelands, a place where you belong, a place that accepts you. But if a country can actively select its population based on quality, political utility, or economic status, at what point does it stop being a homeland and start being a carefully curated club?
And to add to that, if a state is built on the idea of engineering its own citizens, what happens when the citizens start engineering the state back?
Yeah.
Because that seems to be exactly what happened to Ehud Barak.
That is the big question. Can you really design a society, or does society eventually design itself, regardless of the plans made in secret meetings?
History suggests the latter, but leaders never stop trying the former. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating look into the files. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.